Good morning, everyone. Hi. It's great to see everybody here. My name is Eileen Wetzel, and I'm the CEO of the Sierra Sacramento Valley Medical Society. And it's really good to be here in person this morning and to see so many of you. And many of your colleagues are joining us on Zoom this morning. So hello, and welcome to you all as well. So our annual Joy of Medicine Summit, this is our 9th annual summit. We started this program, Joy of Medicine, back in 2017, really to address wellness amongst physicians that are practicing in the region, but not just your individual wellness. We're really working hard on systemic change and working with the different medical groups and health systems in the region to make sure that they're getting feedback on what physicians practicing in this region would like to see in their places of employment and their places of work to have a higher level of wellness. So with that, one of the things that I want to make sure that I mention, and again, for anybody in this room, but more so for your colleagues, the people that couldn't be here today, if you recognize any signs of a colleague that maybe they're having a hard time, maybe they are experiencing some levels of burnout, maybe they're having some difficulty professionally, personally, going through a rough time, or even just needing somebody to talk to. Our Joy of Medicine program does provide up to 6 lifetime visits, free of charge, with any of our participating psychologists and or life coaches that participate in the program. So refer them to joyofmedicine.org. It is a self-referral program. You can choose any of the therapists or life coaches on that page that maybe resonate or that you are interested in seeing. We have no idea who is accessing the program. The only information that psychologists and life coaches gather is basic demographic information and medical group affiliation. Otherwise, we get a bill each month for the services that we've provided, and we pay for it. So I would really encourage you all, not just for yourselves, but also to let your colleagues know and remind them that that service is there. We also have peer groups that meet in physician homes, a Ballant group that is very active and robust, and of course this annual summit. And again, we're really glad that you all are here. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our MC. Where is our MC? Did he disappear? Oh, hi, John. Dr. John Chuck is the chair of the Sierra Sacramento Valley Medical Society Joy of Medicine Advisory Committee, and he is also the chief wellness officer and professor of family medicine at the California North State University College of Medicine. And he is an expert on the subject of well-being and somebody that really kind of brightens all of our days and reminds us that there is so much more to life and to wellness than we can understand. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Dr. John Chuck. That goes right up.
Thank you, Eileen, for that great introduction. If you're not following Eileen on social media, you should. In addition to leading this great medical society, she travels the world and posts really good photos, lots of fun and stuff. Okay, I gotta tell you, there's no place I'd rather be this morning than right here with all of you in person and online. I'm actually in the middle of my annual boys poker weekend in Truckee. I was golfing at Coyote Moon yesterday. We played poker deep into the night, and we have a lot more things planned. And when I found out that this summit was on the same day, same weekend as my boys' weekend, I initially had some concerns, but then I thought there's nothing I'd rather be doing on the Saturday morning of the boys' weekend than being here with you, because this is a fabulous conference, and we have so much in store for you, including 3 great speakers who I know well professionally and personally, and they're just superstars, so you're in for a real treat today. The great thing about the Joy of Medicine program, and by the way, it is overseen by the nation's best local medical society. I'm 65 years old, I've lived a little, I've learned about different local medical societies throughout the United States of America, and I say with full confidence and authority that this is clearly the best. And they are a role model for all the other local medical societies nationwide. Eileen, has been the past president of the organization that oversees all the medical societies, local, state, and national, and everybody looks up to SSVMS. You are a member of a fabulous organization. So the great thing about the Joy of Medicine program is that it goes way beyond personal wellness habits for physicians and other healers. It also takes a deep dive into the other domains of wellness, which include things like operational efficiency and cultures of wellness and stuff. So I really appreciate the rigorous way that the leadership of the Medical Society leads us. We have this wonderful Joy of Medicine Advisory Committee that partners with the Medical Society for the past 8 years to put on this conference. And many of you are here. If you could stand and accept the appreciation and warm applause of the audience. Okay, I know you're out there. If you could please stand. Big round of applause. Kristine, and I saw Lori was here. Where's Lori? Is Lori getting a massage right now? Okay. Lori Gregg with Sutter Health, one of my heroes in leadership for physician wellness. I was at the American Conference for Physician Health in Boston 2 weeks ago, and Lori Gregg was one of the star presenters talking about the great programs they run at Sutter. So big round of applause for all the members of the Joy of Medicine Advisory Committee. Of course, this event would not be possible without the generous support of many people who love healers and this program in particular. So please join me in thanking our sponsors, and I'm going to go down the list. The Permanente Medical Group, Mercy Medical Group, Sutter Medical Group, Sutter Independent Physicians, Hill Physicians, the Woodland Clinic Medical Group, UC Davis Health, the Sierra Foothills Medical Society. We would also like to thank Massage Envy for sponsoring the massage therapists who are on site this morning and being highly utilized. I'm not sure if it's this specific Urban Hive venue, but I think in past years, people haven't utilized the massage therapists quite as much, but they are fully engaged this morning. And so please, before you leave today, make sure you get a body massage. I know some of you don't like to be touched, but it's really nice over there. I guarantee you that. I'm a fan of massage. All right, for those attending in person, one way we're going to keep you here for the duration is it will be giving away raffle prizes at different times in the morning and stuff. Probably saving the best one for last. Is that right? Okay. Okay, and then let's see, what else do we have? Oh, for today's presentation, some of you may be interested in earning CME credit. So for the people who are here in person, you can either fill out a paper survey at the end, or there's a QR code on your table, and you can do it that way. And then for those who are attending online, and by the way, we appreciate you being here. You're probably in your pajamas, like sitting, in your lovely house with a cat on your lap or something like that. The QR code for you is in the chat function of the online program you're in right now. Okay. Oh, did I forget anything? Okay, my wife's not here, but I often, speak, and my wife's usually in the audience, and when I think I'm done, I look to my wife, for a signal that I've left something major out. Okay, so I'm now looking to Lindsay, and she's not saying anything. Okay. Oh, no, if you would like to access today's agenda or speaker bios and stuff, that program is also available through the QR codes on your tables. For those on Zoom, that link has been entered into the chat. Okay. It's my great honor to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Kristine Burkman. For many reasons, I'm really happy. So she's a clinical psychologist who provides frontline care and also is very involved in national, international level research. She's an expert on traumatic stress and moral injury. She's on the teaching faculty at UC San Francisco and at the VA, and is actively involved in research. She also has a wonderful private practice in San Francisco, for those of you who are interested. And so, Kristine, why don't you come on up? Let's give a big round of applause to Dr. Kristine Burkman.
Good morning. I'm so grateful that I get to spend my morning with you guys talking about something that I think is one of the biggest stressors the folks that I work with deal with. So whatever brought them in, when we do that chit chat in the beginning, like, so what's been going on? There's almost always an example or a stressor that has to do with this, combating misinformation and the impact it has on their day-to-day stress and function. So I'm really excited to get to hear from you too. I'm going to be encouraging you guys to talk as well, because I think part of this is being able to share with each other what's working, what's not working, how's it impacting you. Before we jump in, I just want to say I have a clicker issue. Oh, that worked. Okay, good. I have nothing to disclose. I want to approach this kind of looking at it in 3 different ways. The first being the impact on physicians. How does it impact you, both on your day-to-day, but also kind of cumulatively over time? What's the impact that you hold when you do this day in and day out? I want to share some strategies that might be helpful with patients. I come from a background of, for 15 years, I worked in a clinic that saw PTSD and addiction. And for those who are familiar with that population, they're not always happy to see you or be there. And there's sometimes they carry a lot of institutional distrust, or their methods of solving the problem aren't in line with what you're suggesting. So I'm coming from kind of that perspective of how do you work with folks who are really ambivalent to openly hostile. And then I want to think about systems level, like bigger issues. I want to put expectations at a reasonable level today. I don't have a solution for societal misinformation. So if that's what you were hoping for, I don't want to disappoint you. But I don't have a quick fix to that. But the important thing I want to talk about today is how do we make sense of that, knowing that in the room, in the moment, it may feel like you're being asked to combat that, to fix that, to overcome that, when it is so much bigger than the 15 minutes you may have with a patient. So I want to offer some perspective and framework there. Okay, so I actually want to start with a question to get us talking as a group and get a sense of what shows up for you so that we can kind of tailor where we want to go with this. So my first question is just, what do you all find to be the most challenging thing with misinformation with your patients? What's the hardest part about managing this or dealing with this? And we have a mic somewhere in the room. Oh, great, Sam has it. We want to make sure people at home can hear you. Yeah.
Time to explain.
Okay, so just feeling like there's no room and time in the appointment to actually get into it. What else? What else is some of the hardest parts? One over here.
Wow, I'm not that skinny.
Patients come in, they already have a diagnosis and they know what the treatment is. They just want me to order it.
I see.
Yeah.
The ATM of medicine, yes. Yeah, they've already solved it. They just need you to cooperate. Okay. And how does that, sorry, I'm going to sound like a real therapist here. How does that make you feel when they do that?
Not great.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, why did I go to medical school?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I do all this training, all
Right.
these years of experience to just be a secretary?
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. John?
Okay, my patients this weekend are my 7 poker buddies. I would say I'm a moderate politically person, and they're all ultra-conservative. And so I'm saturated in this echo chamber of conservative thought this weekend, and it's all wrong, by the way. And I'm pretty sure I'm right. But what frustrates me the most, in response to your question, is they have no interest in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That is a great point, and one that we're going to try to pay attention to when we talk about what do you do with it for yourself and in the room. Because being able to assess how open a patient is going to be critical. Because, I mean, the last thing we all want to do is metaphorically like bang our head into a brick wall session after session after session, or meeting after meeting. Any other challenges? Yeah.
Overcoming patients' fears about vaccinations and or starting new treatments.
Yeah. So also just the palpable energy of how scared they are, and recognizing kind of the size of that fear, and how do you help them bring that down and help them feel safe and able to trust you. Yeah. Oh, more over here.
Checking the chat.
Oh, good, thank you.
Managing my own frustration when I'm trying to help them and they're coming at me with crazy stuff.
Man, how can you not be a better doctor than to have your reaction, a normal human reaction? Thanks for being so vulnerable with us and letting us know. Yeah, of course, a huge part of what we have to do is regulate our own responses so that we're not ending up screaming, "You're not crazy," or "You're crazy, I'm not crazy, you're crazy," right? That's what we're trying to avoid.
So they expect us to answer all the questions in the Google or internet, whatever they read, before they would talk about themselves.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yes, the unknowing teammate that you have in Google and AI. Yeah.
I think what I find challenging in recent years is that there's a lot of false information out there from voices of authority. Previously, we would say we would fight against online search. Now it's, well, this doctor said it online, or this person high up in government said so. So you're just a local doctor. What do you know? So that's very challenging to fight off another authority.
Yeah, so absolute kind of walking in the room and already feeling like your credibility is being scrutinized, and that there isn't this recognition of role when you come into the room, and how much that gets reinforced when people in positions of power say things that are factually very incorrect. Yeah. Any other reactions? Oh, great.
Yeah, just the,
Oh, you've got it. He's right behind you.
yeah, if the patient wants something that you know will likely be harmful,
Yeah.
it's psychically extremely painful.
Yeah.
Like we were trained, do no harm.
Yes.
And this violates that.
Yes, and I'm gonna speak to that when we start talking about strategies, that there is a big difference between pleasing the patient and caring for the patient. And it doesn't always feel like we're holding our role when they're screaming, "You're useless," but that actually is our measure stick, so we need to try to remember that. Any other challenges with this that we didn't, anything online, anybody? Okay. You guys nailed a lot of them, so I'm kind of stating the obvious here, but I want us to take a little bit of a step back, and while I think the speed, the pervasiveness, the intensity, the extremity, like depending on when you started medicine, it feels like it's gotten a lot more severe, but misinformation has always been with us. There have always been people who get very problematic and dangerous information from others as long as there's been medicine. So I like this quote, "Everywhere you see the spread of germs for the last few thousand years, you see right behind it the spread of lies." Manipulation, power, like where do they get the deepest hooks? Vulnerability, where people are most scared, where they feel like they need to protect things the hardest. That happens in health. Health is an easy place to manipulate people because it's one of our deepest, most like human fears is, are we gonna be okay? Are our loved ones gonna be okay? So this shouldn't surprise anybody, but misinformation endangers the public. We have people telling folks to do really dumb things, harmful things, things that are going to make their conditions worse, things that are going to create additional conditions. We're actively combating against harm happening to our patients and at rapid speed from multiple sources. I think it was mentioned in the group earlier, the deep undermining of trust in medical providers, and in a system where you have very few minutes to try to connect, reassure, validate, explain, educate. That is such a huge hill to have to climb to try to kind of get through all of those barriers. And we can definitely talk about historical barriers to medical care. There are communities that don't feel like they've been acknowledged or recognized or treated fairly. And I think that actually isn't always the folks we struggle with. We understand that. We have a framework for that. It's the TikTok and all the fads that feel so exploitive and manipulative of people that are trying to kind of sell something that I think can be so challenging, because it's like, why are you believing this influencer over a medical provider? And how do I bridge that gap in 15 minutes? It creates more work. So if you need to get through a hard conversation, chances are your appointment's running long, and then you're going to be backed up for the rest of the day. You might have to deal with an angry person who's going to complain about you, and that takes more time. You're having to talk to more people. So there's just an overworked system. Spreading misinformation puts so much more work on your shoulders. And the thing that I'm going to focus on today, because I already shared with you, I can't like shut down sites and like pull misinformation from the waves. But it's role disruption. It's what do we do with it, and how do we understand the way that misinformation takes us out of our role as a healthcare provider. So moving on to why that's a big deal. I'm going to make some generalizations, and if any of them are deeply hurtful or offensive, just yell out anything you feel towards me. But I've worked with a lot of physicians. I've gotten to spend time with a lot of physicians and healthcare providers, and you all are amazing problem solvers. You can figure things out in incredibly short periods of time. You are comprehensive, you are thoughtful, you have all these pieces, and your work, like your computers, your brains are computers that work at an incredibly fast speed. Super impressive. But that is what you gravitate towards. That's what a lot of the training focuses on, is solve the problem. And you have very high standards for yourself. Top of your class, most competitive people that I know. You have such high standards for your care. Whenever I ask, like, oh, do you track positive outcomes? They're like, no, it's expected. We don't celebrate it. That's expected. Perfection is expected. You also value efficiency because you have to. You're asked to do a lot in a very short period of time. So every strategy, everything you can think to do in the moment is to move quickly so that you can get to the next patient and help the next person. And you often show up to this job with a lot of compassion. When you see somebody who's afraid, when you see somebody who's been lied to, you feel drawn to want to fix it, to help, to comfort, to keep them safe, to give them the best advice you can. Misinformation can throw that, like, a major wrench in all of the things that we naturally bring to our job. They can make it very hard for you to solve the problem. You have all the pieces to the puzzle and they're not letting you put it together because they're taking issue with all these different pieces. You may feel like their secretary instead of the person who's helping them walk through the challenge of what they're dealing with. You may feel like they're putting you in a role that doesn't fit, that you're somehow the enemy, that they don't trust you, they think you have an agenda, or you're a gatekeeper, or you're just refusing care because you can. It's a power issue, which is, to pull out a dusty therapist phrase, it's ego-dystonic. It doesn't fit with why you do this or why you're here, right? And we already mentioned the time. When things take a lot longer than when we feel like they should, because what you're combating is not part of the medical problem, it's the social problem that's slowing down your ability to treat the medical problem. That's going to create an intense amount of stress and frustration because it's just not allowing you to do what you came here to do. And I'm just going to, maybe you all don't worry about this, but the more frustrated a patient gets with me, the more I think I'm going to get an email like, hey, we heard you didn't do a great job with that patient, they're upset with you, and that creates stress, right? Or you get a bad Yelp review, or you get this, you get perceived in a way that's not accurate and is totally the opposite of what you're trying to do. And I think we wouldn't be human if we weren't worried about how big of a complaint is this going to be. I mean, I worked at the VA for such a long time. The number of times it's like, I'm calling the White House. And I'm like, okay. Okay. So what happens to us? We get mad. It's frustration tolerance, right? Like when we can't do something we want to do, it's incredibly frustrating. So we can experience intense reactions of anger. And I think, especially when you're a helper, you're kind of trained or taught, or there's like an implicit message that we're supposed to be caring and patient and compassionate all of the time, but that's just not realistic. And if it is for you, like, good on you, but that's not my experience. And part of our job is to help normalize that and also work with ourselves, acknowledge it, deal with it. It's here, let's deal with it, so that we don't act out on the patient in a way that later we judge as like, oh, I didn't handle that great. So where that can show up when you're trying not to be angry is it can come out in sarcasm or condescension. Like, oh, tell me more about how great that new elixir is that's going to reset your metabolism. As somebody who, within the last calendar year, did purchase something off Instagram with that promise. And I'm deeply embarrassed because even when I Googled, like, is this a scam? They're like, most likely. So yes, there's still a chance. There's still a chance that there's this magical information that they're just withholding from all of society to help. Yeah, so it's very easy to express frustration in ways that we think kind of sound professional, but are really us just going like, how can you believe this? You study this for a living and you got bamboozled. Come on. And then there's also passive detachment. So actually, this is what I hear more often than not, which is like, fine, inject yourself with that, whatever. I'm here, I have advice, and if you don't want my advice, there's the door. It's reasonable, it's understandable, but it doesn't actually allow us to do our part to kind of try to chip away at this much larger societal illness, which is misinformation. Our patients are getting manipulated consistently, and they're not always in a place where they want to learn something different. But how do we at least not give them more fuel to further bifurcate and isolate and like divide more? How do we just at least leave the office door open, right? Like, I hear you don't want to hear that now, but if you ever want to hear more, you know where to find me. And then placation. And I think this is where it's very unlikely that this happens if what they want is going to cause harm. But I think there's a pull, because I think you mentioned that earlier. Like, what if they want something that's going to harm them? I think it's rare, and maybe you have different experiences, but in my experience, I don't hear doctors agreeing to do things that cause harm. They just won't. But there is a pull or a tendency to, if there's something that's kind of on the line, it feels easier to just give them what they want and get them out of your office. And while that may be more efficient in the moment, over time, that leads to feeling icky and not great about what you're doing as a provider. And it really does start to feel like you're getting pushed out of your role. So any reactions to that? Anybody like that? That's not me. That never happens. I'm zen the entire time. Yeah, go ahead.
I work mostly as a hospitalist, so like when patients present with like certain things that don't agree with, it's like, okay, whatever. Like it's like become, before in the past it was like more like I would challenge it or, but now it's like I'm not gonna waste my time. I'm just gonna move on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so one thing I want to say up front is you all work in different contexts, and there's going to be different kind of decisional points when you're in an ER versus a hospital versus an ICU versus an outpatient visit, the nature of the illness, how life-threatening the illness is. Like, there's a lot of factors that I can't fit into an hour. The whiteboard would make me look crazy. But I do think it's about prioritizing and like what's the most important thing that you might have to argue with them about, and if something feels just a lot less relevant or important, or it's not going to be something you're going to be able to achieve in that moment, you let it go, because you're trying to maximize what's most important to get them to agree to, and also preserve the relationship. Like, is it going to help if you're fighting them on the 6 things they disagree with, if every single one you're fighting them on, when you really just need to get them to agree to 1 or 2? Right, so good strategic reaction. Any other thoughts or reactions to that before we kind of move on? Okay. So when people make you feel like you're not able to do your role, just be aware that you're going to have a reaction. And sometimes what can help when you're in the moment, because clinics are busy. Like, this sounds great that we're talking about it and reflecting on it, but when you're in it, you're usually in problem-solving mode. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is like work backwards, look at the bottom box. If you start noticing you're having those reactions, chances are somebody's trying to pull you out of your role. And just being aware of that allows you to kind of shift and refocus on what can we actually get accomplished in this interaction, because I'm recognizing the way I want to operate isn't happening. So moving towards managing personal reactions with difficult patient interactions. I'm chuckling a little bit because I think frustration, especially for anybody in a high-risk, high-responsibility job, most of our training encourages us not to feel scared or sad because you can freeze. You don't want to feel overwhelmed or powerless. So what we tend to do with emotions is we go to the ones that feel more empowering. And frustration tends to feel more powerful than helplessness, right? And so even the title of this slide, I remember we were trying to get numbers up in our anger management group at the VA, and people didn't like that term because they didn't like being told that they couldn't manage their anger well. So we changed it to navigating the world with difficult people, which seemed to resonate a little bit better. So it's to not shame the fact that you're angry or frustrated. It's to acknowledge that when you're dealing with difficult people, however that's perceived to you, you're gonna have to contend with the emotions that show up for you. Is there somebody online? Yeah.
Dr. Walton commented online that it happened in urgent care last night. A teen on multiple medications for depression and anxiety came in requesting a sleeping prescription. She was desperate. It was 10 p.m. at night. I had no access to her medical record, and I knew she was desperate. I knew intellectually that it was inappropriate for me to prescribe sleep medication, and I was so distressed in my response to my ability to help her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this feels very familiar, just given who I've worked with, and the pull to want to meet and hold and reflect their distress while also acknowledging like what you want can hurt you, I think is actually one of the hardest things that we have to manage and do, because what they're hearing when they're in a desperate state is, if I don't have what I want, it's like you don't acknowledge or recognize my pain. So just really appreciate their willingness to share that. And we make choices. So if you choose to prescribe something for a day, or you try to find some negotiation, just recognize like you're probably trying to preserve a relationship and keeping somebody engaged. Like, have some compassion for whatever choice you made in that moment, because you're trying to operate on a couple different levels. And you can hold a line, and that can still feel like the right thing to do, and you don't prescribe the med, and recognize that that's going to feel crappy, because what if that person then decides like, providers don't care about me, they don't want to deal with me, and they're less likely to engage. Why did you choose this job? It feels like rock and hard place, guys. Jeez. Okay. So being able to kind of not judge the fact that you're having a strong internal emotional reaction, I think is huge, because when we try to push it away, shove it, and a lot of us get taught to compartmentalize. Don't be hungry, don't be tired, don't need to go to the bathroom. The number of physicians, when I ask them what self-care, and they say, letting myself go to the bathroom, is disturbing. I want to just name that. So of course you don't let yourself feel a lot of the emotions that show up. Not only does it feel like it's counter to how you're supposed to be with patients, but it also just feels inconvenient. I don't want to feel helpless. I don't want to feel distressed. I don't want to feel angry. I have too much to do. But I think the other thing to recognize is sometimes it's our emotions, and sometimes we're picking up on our limbic system is processing what's in front of us. So I remember early in my work working in addiction, I had a very wise mentor who's like, their urgency is not your emergency. You have to recognize that like people don't just use your brain when they're in your office. They're actually using your limbic system to regulate what's happening. They're scared, they're angry, they're overwhelmed. You're gonna feel that, and you may intellectually understand it's not happening to you, but you do that enough times in a day, your body doesn't care. You're gonna be in a state of feeling really intense, really, really affected. And so it's recognizing, like, am I picking up on what they're experiencing? So one, can I at least reflect that you get how desperate they are, like the example of the young woman in the ICU last night. But also, how open are they to having a conversation with you? And I think, like, if we use John's friends as an example, probably not, right? Probably not. And maybe there's not enough leverage of what they need or what they're scared of to kind of open up that conversation. But that's good for us to know because our interventions are going to shift based on where they are. We call that, in addiction work, we call that readiness, like stage of change. Are they ready to hear what you want to say? If people have heard of pre-contemplative, yeah, because it's the same in my yeah. If they're pre-contemplative, you just want to remain a non-condescending, safe person that maybe they'll come back to. They might find you utterly useless today, but if you're relatively open and warm, they may try again, right? And that might be the best you can do that day. And so that comes into the third point of our ability to flex and adapt. What is our goal of the session? And what research shows over and over and over again is patient engagement is like one of the most powerful indicators of whether somebody's going to successfully use health. Will they come back? Do you do enough to give them the chance, to, whether it's with you or another doctor, try again? So you may have to, again, there's a lot of factors. Life and death being one. Like this is where 5150s come in. The relationship takes a hit because you have to do what you have to do, right? But in that moment, are you going to solve the problem, the medical problem in front of you, or are you going to say, this is about building a long-term trusting relationship, and I'm gonna just try to do no harm, be open, not be too reactive, and say, I'm here when you wanna hear more. If that makes sense. Any reactions to that? Okay. So you may not do this. I do. I don't like to be out of control. I like to feel like I'm efficient and competent and can do things. Most human beings avoid feeling out of control. So part of what happens is when we're frustrated or feel stuck or feel like we can't do something that's going to make us feel guilty later, that we're not helping somebody, our brains try to assign blame. It's our way of trying to stay functional and not getting stuck in an emotion. So we either focus on why that person is screwing up our day, and that may be a patient, but it may be a politician, it may be a coworker, right? But a lot of our energy goes into talking about why that is the problem. Or, and the thing that worries me a little bit with providers that I work with, they internalize it. I didn't say that correctly. I should have phrased it in a different way. And I'm a big fan of lifelong learning. There's always things we can improve and do differently, but I think one of my underlying kind of take-home points is when we're talking about misinformation and how open somebody is, how ready they are to hear information, like, you may have said it perfectly, like absolutely perfectly, and it still won't work. And so this idea that, you know, I can't give them what they want, I can't help them, that can lead to a lot of anxiety, guilt, or shame when it's directed at self. So how do we take care of ourselves and maintain perspective so that we don't live in a state of eternal rage, which I've done for periods of time in my career, or we flip-flop into the, I'm a useless provider, why am I doing this? Somebody else could do it better. This isn't the right field for me. So I think part of what we need to do is make sure we stay grounded in what's real. And that was kind of my earlier joke of looking in the mirror and being like, you're not crazy, they're crazy. That's not true. Because repeated exposure can get to us. Even if we know it's not true, think about how, you know, growing up in a very invalidating family feels. If somebody tells you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again that you're not enough, you do start to believe it. And even if we know it's because of misinformation, if you go day in and day out and more often you're getting the message, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're doing, I don't need your advice, you're not helpful, it can sink in. We can internalize it, and then we can start feeling like we're not as efficient, we're not as worthy, we're not as lovable. It can generalize to other parts of our life when you kind of get bombarded with that over and over and over again. And so I think one thing that kind of helps us, and what I'm hoping I'm going to express to you all today, is really being aware of what's the limit of what you can do. I think society is asking you all to do too much. That doctors alone are going to solve this medical misinformation problem is insane. It doesn't logically make sense to think that you and you alone are going to save everybody from Instagram. Like, it just won't. So how do you have compassion for yourself? That a big part of what you do is you hold reality for all of us. You hold the line and you say, Chris, I'm sorry. It's unsexy, but it's working out and eating right. Like, that's what's going to help you. It's not the elixir. I wish it was the elixir. We'd give it away for everybody. But you hold a line of, look, I can't encourage you to do something that's going to hurt you. And I'm so sorry that you've been convinced that this is effective, but with everything I know, I think you've been given some kind of bad information. Remember that, like that, even if it's unsuccessful, you're providing such a huge service to us as a society. You're kind of keeping us all in check of, this is real, this isn't real. People may not want to hear that, but they need to. And you're doing a really profound role when you're able to do that for folks. We struggle to remember that because I think, especially with the rise of like rating your doctor online, Yelp, and patient satisfaction getting conflated with patients getting what they want, I think it can start to feel really hard to feel good about what we do. And we're so busy that we really connect with each other. And so you're doing all of this in isolation. And I will share with you, we are really bad at being as attentive, observant, caring, and proactive in taking care of ourselves as we do our patients and our colleagues. So I think it is really challenging for us to just, in a vacuum, calm ourselves down, remind ourselves that we are actually pretty smart and we do know what data is and evidence is, and that's useful and something to be valued. And so other people are more likely to reflect an accurate view of yourself, especially your peers. Not some of your patients, your peers will be able to reflect back the reality of what you're bringing to the table. And it's just kind of too big of an ask to think that you can do that on your own. We really need each other, and that's the dark humor. If anybody's ever made a joke at a dinner party with non-medical providers and it lands like a lead balloon, this is part of why. You need people who understand the challenge, who can try to make light of and joke around with. I'll never forget early in my career a day where I had a veteran who was struggling so much, and everything I suggested he hated. And he stormed out of my office going, "You're effing useless." And I felt shameful and mad and sad, and I'm a failure. And I came to my team meeting, and my boss at the time, who'd been doing it for 20, 30 years, 25 at the time, looked at me and he goes, "Oh, Chris, I had no idea we were having an induction today. Welcome. Welcome to the Useless Provider Club. We're so happy to have you here." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, oh yeah. We've all been members for decades." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, good. And it's this awareness that, like, part of what helped me that day was this is part of the process. This kid was struggling, and he did come back, and we did eventually find a very underwhelming solution to his problem in that moment. But this is part of it, and being reminded that it's part of it, and you're not a failure, and it wasn't if you were more clever, it would work out better. It's, yeah, you had one of those sessions, you had one of those days. Welcome, friend. We can all be useless together. I think that's really important. And I also think it's important, I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but after like a really long day of not only feeling like people are fighting you on everything, but also just kind of the decision fatigue of how am I going to manage this? Have you ever gone home and somebody's like, "What do you want for dinner?" And you just lose it? You're like, don't. Why? Because I'm going to tell you, "Oh, I kind of feel like Italian." And you're like, "Really? I wanted Thai." And you're like, "Why are you fighting me on everything?" Like, you don't want to have another interpersonal interaction that feels ineffective, that feels like you have to make a decision. And so it can start to lead to like just the shutdown after a shift where you're like, "I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to hang out with anybody." And what I worry about with healthcare providers in particular, especially when you're already prone to put everybody else's needs first, is that you stop prioritizing just getting to connect with people on a non-doctor level through hobbies, through stupid TV shows, through poker, whatever it is that has nothing to do with being a doctor, because it's reminding yourself that you too are human, that it's unfair to expect you to solve every problem, including a societal one as big as what we're talking about today. You get to just like hang out and participate. And that is as important as directly talking to somebody, whether it's a loved one, a therapist. You can talk about the direct stress. I think that's really important. But don't minimize or underestimate the importance of like putting it away and actually going and doing something different, just to try to remind yourself that, oh, I do kind of like people in this context when they're not yelling at me. I think that can be really important. So one thing that I want to ask again is, knowing that community and compassion, some of the best lines I've ever had with like really tricky situations around somebody wanting a certain type of, in our line of work in addiction, it was like they want a benzo, or they want certain things that are really hard. My colleagues give me some of the best lines. My favorite line for somebody that we know is actively not being truthful is, I learned this from my colleague who's an amazing group therapist, I'm gonna hold the side that's skeptical that that's true. So you don't have to just say like, you're lying, but there's all these little phrases that are so helpful, and it happens in hallways. It happens when we're debriefing and joking and trying to like connect around humanity of this job and what are we doing with these folks. And so that's where I want to lead us next is what works, guys? Share with each other. What strategies have you found to be the most effective when you're, like on the days that you're on it and it doesn't get you under? What works? What do you think's helpful? Share with each other. How do you say some of the hard things?
Are you saying to say to the other providers or to say to your patient?
Share whatever you want to say to your patients or other providers, but sharing with each other. Like we're each other's support
one thing,
right now.
This is just an orthopedic thing.
Yeah.
One thing I would say is, an MRI is a roadmap to surgery. Are you ready for the knife?
Yeah.
and that's serious, and that's true. It's like, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So one of it is, I think, highlighting there are consequences to paths that we take. So you're actually, and you're using, I find that pretty humorous, but you're using a way to try to help people understand decisions have consequences. Like the ways we go about our treatment plan are going to have consequences, and that might get them to slow down and be a little less insistent or certain about what they want, more curious. Yeah, other things that work for you all. Yeah.
We often talk about using the phrase, stay curious, not furious.
Yes,
And
that's a good
so
one.
tell me more about your thoughts on this. It sounds like you're really concerned about these injections. Can you tell me more? Are you open to hearing some other ideas?
Yeah.
I also really like the MRI thing because for me in primary care, it's often, I need an MRI for my back. And so MRIs are fantastic when we're looking at doing surgery or injections. Are you ready for those? Do you want to talk about those yet?
Yeah.
And usually it's, oh, no. Okay, great.
Awesome. You stole my thunder a little bit for a future slide, but that's okay. But it's really good. It's great. Yeah. What else has been helpful? Oh, sorry, one over here. Yeah, thank you.
Since hormones are having their moment,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have a lot of 80 or 90-year-olds asking me for them, and so my best line is, "You're just too nice to have a stroke."
Oh, that's good. Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. Yeah, thank you.
A lot of times when we have a difference of opinion and, I'm a pediatrician, the mom wants something 180 degrees from what I think is the right thing. Sometimes I'll just try and find that common ground. And, we both want what's best for Johnny. And just start from there. And if we can find that common ground, that usually kind of softens the temperature of the room a little bit, and maybe that leads to more conversation.
Absolutely. So you guys are bringing up really important points with the staying curious, trying to understand what they're looking for, being transparent about your intentions. Like, we both want what's best for Johnny. We're both here to try to protect, taking care of Johnny. And that's different than saying, I know what's best for your child. You don't care about your child or know about your child in a certain way. You're really trying to engage and be like, we're both on the same page. That's a good reframing. Yep.
I try to help the patient define and ask them what is their goal. And oftentimes I can align with the goal.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, this is our goal. This is how I think we should get there. And let's get your input.
Yeah.
And we're both trying to get to the same place.
Yeah, awesome. So more alignment, more engagement. What you guys are describing is like really hone in on what is the end point, what is the goal, and can we at least agree with that? That's great. Yep.
I'm a palliative care provider, and there are things that we can't change, even though patients want to. So often I'll say, I wish. So I wish, which is acknowledging their hope, but also recognizing that we can't change the course of things.
Yeah. And I think that's another really great example of transparency around limits. So you're making it really clear you're not withholding something that would be amazing, and that you actually have a human reaction to, I wish we had more that we could offer you. Again, it's identifying and aligning with your intentions, and I think it's a very humanizing experience to have a provider be like, I really wish we had an answer for you, but this is what we know. Great answers. Any other? Yeah.
Sometimes I find just using my own personal experience, or if you were my mom, I would really recommend that vaccine for you because she had shingles and it really was a horrible experience, or something in that realm.
Yeah.
If you were my child, I definitely vaccinated all my kids, or I feel this medicine's really safe. My kid used it. That seems to help because it's not about them. It's something that I felt safe and just sharing.
Yeah, and I think that it's a wonderful example of actually trying to take yourself out of whatever role they might have put you into, that you're not a gatekeeper, you're not a threat. By telling them, like, your mom, your child, you're reminding them it's actually a de-escalation technique. You're humanizing yourself so they see you less as the enemy. And I think it can be really effective when they recognize that you're not some authority trying to hurt them, that they can really connect in that way. Yeah, we'll take a couple more.
One more comment from online. Sitting across and close to my patients, asking directly what they came for and what they want me to do, and then gently share my perspective if I have a different plan.
Awesome. Great example. And I think all of this is in line with what are in the future slides, so way to be on track. Thank you. That makes my job a lot easier. This is not an example of what we're talking about of being in the room. You all are coming at me with really good, informed decisions. Any other reactions? Yep.
Yeah, I've realized that the patients have a much longer time to prepare for the meeting, for the visit, than generally we do.
Yeah.
So they come with an agenda that they've been thinking about for weeks or days or months. And so what I've learned is I listen to them and find a time and an opportunity to validate what feelings they are showing and how tough it must be for them. And I find that sort of de-escalates or diffuses the situation immediately, that in fact there isn't a battle. And if there isn't a battle, then that opens up the opportunity, as was mentioned prior, to find that common ground.
Yeah.
And that common ground now, the gates are just wide open to choose an opportunity to join that common ground, and then it becomes a lot easier.
Y'all know what you're doing. Exactly. I think that's great. The way you're describing that, it makes me think like it's so obvious that we don't just cut someone open. They walk in the door and we're like, whoosh, surgery's happening. There's pre-op. There's conditions that we encourage to make sure that that's going to be a successful procedure. The same is true of conversations, especially when we're combating misinformation. We're combating people who have a lot of fear and a lot of hope, that have ruminated for days, months, years, and have built in their head. They've probably had multiple arguments with you before they ever get in the office in their head. I know. I don't know if anybody else imagines what they tell people, but that's what we do, right? And if we can realize that they're not ready to have the office visit that we're ready to have, they haven't been through like the pre-op of this office visit, slowing down, reflecting what they're feeling, reflecting what they need, their goals, a lot of what you guys are describing, it's creating the conditions to even have the intervention of a conversation. If that makes sense. So, wherever the art of medicine is loved, there's also a love of humanity. I think a lot of what was described both from the comments online and here in this room is the slowing down, the being present, the showing up as a full human. Even when it's ugly, it's showing up as a full human to say like, hey, let's slow down. I care about you. I want you to be okay. I know you're asking me for something that I think is dangerous, but you keep reminding people like who you are, what you're here for, and that you see them. And they may not be able to hear it easily or well in that session, but that is our role. Our role is to say, I see you and you're suffering, and let's try to put our heads together on how we might be able to address that. But that is such a core part of what we do. We're treating more than just the illness. We're treating the experience of being sick. So there is an emerging evidence-based model of the misinformation response model. And I think this has more to do with kind of like large-scale public health. I'll share it with you briefly, but this was a group that was really working with primarily cancer misinformation, so it was a more like targeted approach, but just looking at how bad or how much higher the mortality rate is when people subscribe to non-evidence-based, science-based interventions when they're battling cancer. So just that's the framework that it came from, but I think there's relevant parallels. And then we've talked about this a lot already, which is rolling with resistance. How do you stay out of a fight that you don't want to be in the first place, right? How do you move something forward and really prioritize and index on engagement? And then finally, remaining safe. And for us, I think that also means sane. So how do we stay grounded in what we know? And how do we fully choose to hold the mantle of you are society's truth teller? That is part of what we're asking you to do. And how do you do that? So you can go into this in more, I mean, all of you are welcome to the slides, but I think the idea is this is a lot of stuff that we're already talking about as a group. How did they get that information? And the reason why I think the question of like, oh, where did you hear that is important is it's gonna hold more salience if it's coming from a family member, if it's deeply aligned with their values, whether it's cultural values, sometimes now more political values, but where's the source of information coming from? I think some people that pursue certain, like if you get a vaccine, even if you can convince that person that it's the right thing to do, what's the pushback they're gonna have from their family? Can you address and talk about like what they're scared of just by taking that step, even if they want to? They're conflicted, right? So who's sharing that with you? And even just validating, that must be so hard to be on the fence about this when people in your life are giving you such strong feedback about this. The idea of correcting misinformation through education, I appreciate it and understand it. And going back to everything we said, it's knowing when. I mean, the whole motivational interviewing approach is we're asking permission. Like, are you open to hearing it? It's the getting curious, not furious. That's for us and them. Like, would you like to know more? And I think this is where our systems can help out providers who have no time in the first place. If there's a theme, like hormones in 80 and 90-year-olds are definitely having their moment. Tylenol is going to be having its moment. Like there's things that show up that end up taking a lot of time. Is there a way that we can do a one sheet where you recognize they're not going to fully listen to you, they're not going to encode it? Can you send out materials to at least say, like, if you're willing to just look this over and then contact me, ask me about questions, know that you're still providing information, even if they're totally unopen to the information at the moment. I worry about the correct misinformation from like, if they're not open, it's not going to help. So find other ways that you can try to do that. And then I think, and we'll talk about, we're rapidly running out of time because you guys have really good stuff to say. But the whole idea that this is not your fight alone is digital literacy. So I disclosed my own bamboozlement with Instagram because it is so easy and captivating to think that certain sites that look medical, they aren't medical. So we have to, as a society, really figure out how are we going to teach people? I mean, we used to think it was just like, no, grandma, that's not a hostage. Like, you don't need to send money to somebody who says they're going to, whatever. Like, it used to be very obvious scams, and now it's not. It's really sophisticated. It's people presenting as, like, very legitimate, valid medical experts, and it's not. So being able to, like, be confident as providers, hey, here's a list of sites I'd like to encourage you to look at. Here's how they're vetted. Here's why I value them. I think this organization is really stringent in the information that they share. They have very high standards in peer review. And why is peer review important? With all the extra time you have in your sessions to describe this. But I think that's a huge part, is how do we even address clickbait and deception? And I think one question that I thought was really helpful was like, I wonder who benefits from convincing people that just taking this one pill can change your life. Like, I wonder who's benefiting from that, right? It's capitalism, right? And then, again, as much as you can, you want to preserve just an open door policy. If you don't want to hear it today, you know where to find me. I care about you. I would just want you to be well. It's an invitation to come back. So we've already mentioned like more motivational interviewing being kind of bread and butter. Anytime I'm walking into a room with somebody, what I love about this approach and this strategy is that it just lets me kind of shift gears and be like, I'm walking alongside somebody. We're just going to see where they land. I don't have to. It helps me just remember, don't be so focused on the 4 things you want to tick off your to-do list of things that you wanted to get accomplished. So like in my example, it'd be like, I want them in residential care. I want them to accept a medication. A lot of that may not happen depending on how they show up that day. And then dialectical behavioral therapy. Have people heard of this, DBT? It was developed for folks who suffer from borderline personality disorder, and that's a result of growing up in a very invalidating house paired with conditions that you may have been more vulnerable to. But the whole point of the therapy, because one thing that happens a lot with clients like this, and we see it all over in other clients as well, which is why the strategy is helpful, it's the help seeking, help rejecting. I am desperate for your help. I am so scared. I am so sick. I am so overwhelmed. I don't like that answer. And I don't like that answer, and I don't like that answer. I don't want that. But I need help, and you're not helping me. But no, I don't like that offer of help, right? It's that back and forth that puts providers in this awful position where they feel like they're, in a double bind. They can't do anything. And so part of the strategy to get through those moments is that you want to, and you guys already mentioned this, you validate before you introduce. And challenge doesn't mean like you're crazy. Why would you think that? Challenge just means, can you get curious? Can I offer another perspective? But before you even get there, I hear how concerned you are about Johnny. I get how scary this is. It's awful. Aging, yes, horrible, very frustrating and hard. You're finding ways to let them know you see them before you ever introduce any new information. And then the transparency. I love what you said about, I wish there was something that we could do, but here's what we have at our disposal. Really, really helpful. That's with the phrase they use in that treatment is radical authenticity. And then maintaining safety, and I think that's one of the most helpful things for me was recognizing it takes people several attempts to get clean and sober. So that any given interaction you have, you're just planting seeds, but they're really important seeds. They're things that people may hang on to, they may remember. How you treat them, how a little phrase that you say 10 years later, it might have been a really important thing that they remember, right? And so it's recognizing that you won't get that great satisfaction of problem solved at the end of your 15 minutes. That's why in a phase of my career when I was really feeling like most of my sessions weren't going the way I wanted, I got really into washing dishes because they were dirty and then they were clean and it was very simple and I could solve it, right? So just know that it's something that we have to work and remember, and I think remind each other about, oh man, that sounds like a rough day. You did a lot of seed planting today. Just remember, you never know the impact of what that is. And then I always want to just mention this because I think it's something that we just need to be aware of. And depending on their presentation and the situation, I recognize there's people who really don't have a lot of control and you have to intervene in kind of risky situations. But in terms of acknowledging and supporting your own boundaries, when it's more verbal abuse and it's getting into the realm of they're just starting to get nasty, part of keeping and you're not necessarily worried it's going to get physical, but it's getting really unpleasant and disrespectful and abusive. I learned a long time ago, I used to think that I had to just tolerate it, oh, it's part of the job, I just have to hear them talk about it. And I had a colleague say that you're not keeping the room safe when you allow that. And your job is to keep the room safe. And so when they're doing something that's not safe, our job is to contain it. And one way that we do that is, you remind them, I'm here to help you, we're here to work on this problem, and I'm unable to do that if you're making threats or if you're disparaging me in that way. I can't actually help you the way I need to help you. We can't continue this office visit unless we're able to at least agree to have a conversation where that's not part of the language. And hopefully you have systems and teams who support you in that. But I think that actually is really huge because we did see a huge increase in not just verbal constant hostility against providers, but even some physical violence, especially during COVID, when people were having really strong reactions to vaccines and need for things. So I want to make sure that you keep yourselves safe. So we have very little time left, and we can either go big or we can go small. So we have a decision point. Do you guys want to focus on big societal fix or in your team's fix? In your team's, great. Because it's a big question. All I want you to know about this is that it is not your job alone, that the rest of society needs to pick up the mantle and help with this. Okay, so my question is, do you guys reach out to your colleagues when you have a really difficult interaction with a patient? Why or why not? And maybe sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but I'm really curious about what lets you reach out and what prevents you from reaching out. Oh. We're going to give you a little bit more time. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, thanks. We're still not going to tackle the societal one. It's a big one, so we'll stay here. But what lets you reach out and what gets in the way?
I think it depends where I am on the scale of useless provider that day. How much the interaction hit me.
Yeah.
If I feel like, I can share that with my teammates, but sometimes it's just so bad. I'm like, I'm just going to go home and lick my wounds.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. Other folks. Good answer. Other folks.
It's really difficult. I mean, I would love to reach out, but we're so busy. All I can focus on is myself.
Yeah.
I kind of get a sense that, okay, my partner that sits next to me is having a rough day, but that's only because I'm physically there seeing her.
Yeah.
The guy across the hall that I don't really see, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we're really, at least in our group, we're more of a reach out. If you're having trouble, here's all these resources, but that entails that person picking up the phone, sending an email.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a pull than a push, and that's hard.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think there's an implicit message, like, if you need help, reach out. And I think even that phrasing is like, if you're not managing this part of your job successfully, reach out. And I think that is such a huge barrier versus the alternative of like, we're all struggling with this, right? Like, this is part of the landscape. And you're actually operating from an assumption that people are having to lick their wounds, that people are having reactions that require support.
So in palliative care, we provide team-based care. We can't do this alone, and I think it's really humbling being in the specialty where I recognize as a physician I can't attend to the spiritual needs of a patient or the psychological distress. And our team has really made an effort to create an environment where we are, there's a hierarchy that's flattened. It's not like the physician is any better than the social worker or the chaplain, and we are all very open. And so we've been able to build an environment that really supports one another.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we'd want that for everybody. And I recognize, depending on the situation you're in, it can feel very siloed and isolating. So we'll talk a little bit about maybe some strategies for that. Any other reactions? Yeah, great.
I'm realizing that early on in our practice, my colleague, the office lead, started having lunches on Mondays. It's like 15 minutes. It's brown bag. We just show up. Sometimes people have almost nothing to eat, but it's just a chance to talk, and it's just a few of us. But I'm realizing that so often I would not have shared if I didn't have that kind of built-in space. Yeah. And I think in part because there's this embarrassment. Like, if I was a better clinician, this wouldn't be happening. And also, I think I'm remembering right now, there was a time when I would have an older man patient, and I would walk in, and he would be naked each time I came in.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a young clinician having no idea what to do about the situation. And I was embarrassed, and it was kind of awful. And if I hadn't had those built-in places to just feel like I could talk and get some feedback from my colleagues, I'm not sure. It certainly would have been even harder. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And now we have a new clinician starting soon. And I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm available for just those little bounce-off things. Because most of the time, we're doing the right stuff. And we just need that reassurance from colleagues who are walking the same walk.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing like I can't help but notice you're completely naked. And I'm wondering if you do that with every appointment that you have. Curious. Is that in line with how we're supposed to talk to patients? But I think that's such a good point. It's creating that culture. And again, it's not the asking them to ask. It's leading with offering, being like, come talk to me. How did that week go? Have you seen anything that seems odd? Tell me what's the weirdest thing you saw this week, or what's the strangest thing you heard? Because we're trying to make it easy. You all are so high achieving, and you're used to excelling in everything. But my God, humans are messy and weird and sometimes mean. And so you can't predict the best response all the time. So you want to just lead with, man, our job is weird, right? And trying to make space for that. Yeah. And then we have one over there.
The intention of this was not to plug this at this point, but I have been part of a valiant group for the past several years now. And I find that space is very, very useful as each one of the providers gets an opportunity to share a specific difficult patient interaction.
Great.
And allow all the remaining 7 or 8 other providers around to just listen and then reflect without the intention of psychological therapy or anything like that.
Yeah.
So having done that over the last several years, and also having been in practice for about 20 years now, we have the benefit of having a very new and large onboarding of newer physicians. And so what I've realized has been helpful is to periodically check in with them, knowing that they're going through not only difficult scenarios, but also these are new. These are relatively new things. And so sometimes just sharing, either sharing an experience that I had so that it encourages them to share their experiences in the hallway, in the beginning of the day, during lunchtime, how are things going as you're building your practice, and anything frustrating about the patient interactions, and really sort of to coax that out so that they feel that there is this availability to discuss these things have been useful.
Absolutely, and I really value, and then we'll do one more comment, but I really value the scope, that it doesn't have to be a protected 30 minutes or even 15 minutes, but it is like microseconds in a hallway of just being like, how's the day going? That actually has a huge impact. And it can be side text. Say you never get to leave your office. I don't know if people send memes to each other, but like silly things throughout the day that you can get back to on your private phone, just in case there's dark humor that you don't want documented. Private phones. But it's that idea of it's creating a culture where even if you don't see them, I know at our VA, our building got renovated. We didn't see each other for almost 2 years. We were in such different pockets of the hospital. It was creating a virtual community of just check-ins and jokes and are you okay and invitations. And then if you can create stuff like this, like what we're doing today, or a lunch or a walk, more power to you. But as much as you can reflect that we need lots and lots and lots of different points of interaction to help us stay sane, it's really helpful. Yes, one more comment, yeah.
I was just going to mention something called Schwartz Rounds that we used to do at South Sacramento, which was a multidisciplinary group that got together at a lunch once a month and talked about a difficult patient interaction that people had participated in without having anything to do with the medical care of the patient, but simply people who were nurses or whoever took care of this patient could get together and talk about how they felt about the interaction with this difficult patient. We did that for several years at South Sacramento Kaiser. I don't know if it's still going on. I'm retired now. But,
I hope so.
But I think that sometimes looping in non-physician colleagues broadens the support network.
Absolutely, and I thank you for making that point. And yeah, you can talk to other people too. Anybody who's in the general, I didn't mean to make it sound so exclusive. Anybody who's dealing with the number of, when I think about who gets the brunt of bad moods, at least at the VA, it was our front desk admin. They could tell you better than anybody the temperature of what the clinic was going to be like, and including them in kind of debriefing and processing, like, boy, that was a crazy day. It can be really, really helpful. And so we've already covered all of this. I want to end with anything you can do to increase and normalize, like, this job is tough and you're a human, you're going to have a wide range of reactions, and it matters. Like, you're doing way more than just healing a medical problem. You're actually our front line of chipping away at an enormous global wound, which is misinformation and manipulation. So just have compassion for that. Have respect for the fact that you are doing the most of anybody to try to break down these falsehoods and trying to help people recognize what is safe and not safe. And you are frequently going to be unappreciated for it. But I see you, and I see what you're doing, and I'd like to invite you all into the Useless Provider Club. It is an honorable and noble club that I am proud to be part of. So thank you all very much.
Applause for Dr. Burkman. Thank you so much. I've actually had the pleasure of teaching with Kristine at a wellness retreat center in Scotts Valley for many years, and I'm so grateful she took the time to drive up from the Bay Area and share that wonderful message with my home team peeps here in the Sacramento Valley. So thank you very much once again. You may have noticed the wonderful engagement during her presentation, and I sort of sat in my little chair there standing in awe of the collective wisdom of the people in this room. Some of you I've known since I was an intern in 1986, and those of you who are saying wonderful things who I don't know, I wish I had worked with you in your medical group during my career and stuff, but it's a great segue to a request that the Medical Society has. We are actually looking for volunteers to serve in two very important capacities. One is to be a mentor to a young person in the community, an up-and-coming healer and stuff. So if you have it in your heart and you have the time in your life to be a mentor for a young person, please let the Medical Society know, and we'll sign you up as a mentor. We also are looking for volunteers to participate in our Future of Medicine course, which is run in the summer for high school students. A wonderful program that many of you have been involved with over the years, and another way to change the trajectory of another human life as somebody who wants to be a healer just like you. Okay, I think, the other thing I want to say is, currently the line for the massages is very short. And the standard here is that you can get it for a massage anytime, during one of the talks, whatever. You can also go to the bathroom anytime you want, because, you know, we're healers. We understand that you need to do that. But right now, let's take a break, and we'll reconvene at 10:15 or so, okay? All right, thank you all.